probably the first place that we start is making sure that there's enough protein in the diet. The next thing then is making sure that actually, ironically, that there's not too much protein. Because it doesn't happen very often, but every now and then we have people with too much. And protein's actually very acidic, and the body doesn't like to be acidic. So then we have to look at how we balance that acidity, potentially reducing the protein if there's too much, but then introducing alkalizing foods. And that's when we're counting the number of portions of fruit and vegetables that someone has. Because that's probably the second most important thing that we're looking for. You know, the government guidelines in most countries is 5 portions of fruit and vegetables combined in a day. But then there are some countries such as Japan, which will talk about 11 portions. Other countries, I think it might even be Australia, talk about 9 portions. And we know the research is consistently coming out between 7 and 10 portions of fruit and vegetables a day that we need. And it's amazing how many people are not even close to that. Even people who have been working on their diet for some time before coming to us, they think they're healthy, and at first glance to any of their friends and family, they'd probably think it was healthy. But once we start digging in, we can see that there's not enough.
Yeah, I think often what the true perspective would be that it's healthier than they were, but it's not the same as being healthy.
Yeah,
in a
absolutely.
Sense. And do you want to say a few words about the foods that when people get told they shouldn't eat normally result in a slight panic attack of foods like dairy and gluten and sugar, the things that, you know, a lot of a Western diet is basically built upon those staples, and a lot of people take great joy in eating those things. But yeah, so say a few words about some of that.
Yeah, I mean, we do suggest for most people our initial guideline is to trial gluten and dairy free. It's not essential because we're aware that for some people it can be very stressful, and we're constantly working to reduce the stress on the body. That's why we want to maintain the blood sugar level balance. That's why we're wanting to make sure there's enough phyto plant nutrients in the diet, because we're all about reducing stress. So we don't want to do that on the one hand and then add a whole extra stress by saying you can't have gluten or dairy ever again. But we do recommend, where people are able to, that they exclude it as a trial period. But, you know, we help them with that. We talk about a staged approach. It doesn't have to be all at once. Most things we talk about, you know, just do one meal at a time and get that right over a week or a fortnight before you then start even thinking about what you're going to do for the next meal. And, you know, we always talk about it's not for life. It is a trial, because I think that's where some people get a little bit overwhelmed and think, oh my goodness, I can never ever have gluten again. Well, it doesn't have to be like that.
Right.
But, you know, for some people we'll find it makes a difference. And it is the gold standard, actually, to find if you've got an intolerance or if it works for you or not. The gold standard is really trialling it rather than testing. You can test, but there's nothing better than seeing what it actually feels like in the body.